Today we're going to be talking about Romeo and Juliet. And before we start, I want to ask you guys what you already know about Romeo and Juliet.
Well, I know it's a love story between two rival families.
Yes.
And, I just know in the end, they both die.
Very true. Jocelyn.
It's a love story. I'm pretty sure Romeo's a womanizer. And the Taylor Swift song. That's pretty much it.
You know the Taylor Swift song. There you go.
Romeo
All right,
and
so
Juliet.
I'm going to give you guys some background information about the play up until the point that we're going to start. So at the beginning of the play, there's a feud going on in Verona between the Montague family and the Capulet family. And the fighting between the two families has caused the leader of Verona, who's called Prince Aeschylus, to say that if there's any more fighting in the streets of Verona, there's going to be a death sentence to those that are fighting. So it's pretty heavy stuff, I know. So first I'm going to talk about Romeo, who's a Montague, and he's introduced as a young man who is in love with a young woman named Rosaline, but Rosaline is not returning his love. She has declared herself chaste and is going to go be a nun, I guess. But there's a lot of, she's never actually seen in the play, but Romeo talks about her as being very beautiful, and a lot of other characters do too. And she's decided that she's going to live a chaste life, which is why Romeo is so upset at the beginning of the play. So his cousin Benvolio and his friend Mercutio decide to take him to a masquerade party at the Capulet's house, which is enemies, in order to cheer him up and to try and maybe find some new women to chase after. And Juliet is a Capulet. She's 14-year-old daughter of Lord and Lady Capulet, who are, I know, she's pretty young. So she's the 14-year-old daughter of them. And at the beginning of the play, she's being pressured into thinking about marriage by her mother, who is talking about how she was married when she was 14 years old and how it's totally normal, which is kind of weird.
Normal.
Yeah. So she promises to think about it, think about marrying Paris, the man that her parents have picked out for her. So at this point in the play, Romeo is secretly attending this masquerade party at the Capulet's house, and nobody knows about it. Nobody knows that he's there. But the scene that we're going to watch is when he first sees Juliet. Okay. Bring this over here for us to all see.
Okay. What lady is that, which doth enrich the hand of yonder knight? I know not, sir. Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night as a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear. Beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. So shows a snowy dove trooping with crows, as yonder lady o'er her fellow shows. The measure done, I'll watch her place of stand, and touching hers, make blessed my good hand. Did my heart love till now, or swear it sight, for I ne'er saw true beauty till this night.
Okay, so yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff for seeing somebody for the first time. But so I want you guys to look at these lines that Romeo is talking about right here. These lines when he first sees Juliet, and tell me what you think that he's saying in those lines. What do you think these lines mean?
Well, I think he's just starstruck. Especially the first time seeing someone who's like really pretty on the other side of the room. It's like, oh my gosh, she's like right there.
Yeah.
You know, ask her out. So.
What do you think, Jess?
Yeah, I think he has an obsession with her because he's talking about, I'll watch her place a stand and touching hers make blessed my rude hands. So he's really fascinated by her, and he seems to really be fixated on her. And I think he's the type of guy that won't quit until he gets her.
Right. All right, good. So, up until this point in the play, Romeo has been in love with Rosaline, which I told you guys about before. And do you think that when he says he's in love with Juliet, like he does in this scene, he actually means that he is in love with Juliet? No. It doesn't seem like that. Why not?
Because he's a womanizer.
Yeah.
Well, because he just fits the mold of becoming obsessed with things, and he sees them as things, as something new to obsess about, and it's not. He doesn't talk about their personalities or something that's everlasting. He talks about what he sees right in this moment, and that's not actually love.
I could also see it as more like he's just gotten over some really bad breakup, and he's like all depressed. And he's like, I kind of need a girl to fill my life. So
Rosaline's love for Romeo was not returned, yet Romeo still loved her, and now he hasn't even met Juliet. He's just seen her from across the room, and her beauty seems to have entranced him so much that he's apparently fallen in love with her now and forgotten all about Rosalind. And what I want to do now is introduce what's called a Petrarchan lover. A very simple definition of this is someone who is in love with the idea of being in love, more than the person or their qualities itself, or they're just in love with certain qualities about a person. But what's important to note about the Petrarchan lover is that they are bye.
Bye.
What's important to note about Petrarchan lover is that they love somebody who is unattainable to them, or someone whose love is unreciprocated. And oftentimes Petrarchan lovers speak about someone who is already married, or someone who's dead, someone who's unattainable to them. So now I want to look at a different scene in Act 1, and I want you to look at the lines Romeo is speaking about Rosaline, and see if you can identify any aspects of them that would make Romeo seem as if he were a Petrarchan lover. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I ain't so near, and I suppose the other one. A right good markman! And she's fair, I love. A right fair mark, there, cuz, is soonest hit. Well, in that hit you miss, you'll not be hit. With Cupid's arrow she hath Diane's wit, and in strong proof of chastity well armed from love's weak childish bow she lives uncharmed. She will not stay the siege of loving pearls, nor by the encounter of assailing eyes, nor of her back the saints abusing cold. Oh, she is rich in beauty, only poor, that when she dies, with beauty dies her store. Then she hath sworn that she will still live chaste. She hath, and in that sparing makes huge waste for beauty. Starved with her severity, cuts beauty off from all posterity. She is too fair, too wise, wisely too fair to merit bliss by making me despair. She hath forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead, but live to tell it now. Be ruled by.
All right. So those lines that Romeo just spoke about Rosaline, we can go back and look at them, but are there any certain lines that stuck out to you for being those of maybe a Petrarchan lover?
Yes.
Which lines are those?
When he is talking about, for beauty starved with her severity, she's too fair, too wise, wisely too fair, and
any of these lines?
She will not. Well, he talks about Cupid too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's talking just about Cupid and her chastity, and
right.
When she dies, with beauty dies her store. He's only fixating on how beautiful she is.
Right.
He talks about her decision to remain chaste.
Yep.
As something that's bad.
Right.
And something that makes her less of a person, when in reality him only fixating on what she looks like is the dehumanizing.
Right, and that's really good. That's kind of exactly what Petrarchan lover is. They only fixate on the beauty aspects of somebody, and they don't really focus on the person themselves. So what you said, he's kind of just dehumanizing her because he's focusing on all these attributes that don't really mean anything, like her beauty and stuff. It doesn't look deeper. All right, good. And he's talking about her because she's unattainable. So if you look right here, I think it says, which line is it? This help right here. Talks about Romeo is talking about Rosaline's chastity, and he's talking about how she's unattainable. He says that it's not just a waste of her beauty now, but it's a waste of her beauty in the future, because she won't make any children who are beautiful too. So yeah, it's really good.
Rather than focusing on maybe the legacy she could leave behind with being chaste.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we saw some of those aspects. So do you think any of the lines, so we talked about that, Romeo spoke about Rosaline, were those of a Petrarchan lover? So yes. So do you remember the question I asked you before, that if you thought Romeo's love for Rosaline is any different than the love he feels for Juliet? And if so, what makes it different? Do you remember that?
I don't think so.
You don't think it's any different?
Not yet. I mean, maybe I would have to see and hear more of it to be able to say if, because obviously when you just see someone from across the room,
yeah, you can only really think about their physical.
So you can be like drawn to them and want to go talk to them, but right. I think I'd have to wait and see. But just from knowing his character so far, and knowing that this is a tragedy, it makes me feel like it's just the same, that he's the same person throughout. And generally, that's how characters are. They don't change up a whole lot. They remain one person. So.
Right. All right, so this next scene is the famous balcony scene in Romeo and Juliet, where Romeo goes and stands outside Juliet's house under her balcony, and they speak to each other. But this is before Juliet sees him, and he sees her on the balcony. But this is him talking about her right now.
Jests and scars that never felt them. Soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief that thou her maid art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious, her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools to wear it. Cast it off. It is my lady. Oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were.
Okay. So thinking about that, so Romeo is, outside Juliet's house, and he's looking up at her, but she's there, right? Whereas with Rosaline, we never see her. She's just kind of this enigma, this beautiful girl, but she's not really a person. She's not present. So now thinking about what do you remember about the definition of a Petrarchan lover?
It's someone who fixates on something that's unattainable.
Right. So for Romeo, Rosaline was unattainable, right? But now, do you think that these lines and the fact that he's there seeing Juliet, how does that make her different from Rosaline?
Well, she's not chaste, and she is attainable, and we do see her, and they do have interactions.
Right, and you just know the common knowledge from the play. Yeah. They end up meeting and talking. So,
right. So maybe he could start off as Petrarchan and then realize that he could have her, and then it could change.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of different things about his relationship with Juliet from his relationship with Rosaline. For one, they obviously do have interactions with each other, and she is attainable. She's not married, she's not dead, she's not chaste, so she's not unattainable for Romeo. She is kind of there. The only thing that I think sort of makes her unattainable is the fact that their families are enemies. But other than that, the way he talks about her, she's still somebody that is present and somebody that is able to be reached by Romeo. So yeah, that's my lesson on Petrarchan lovers. So yeah, that's it.